All right, it's it's the time to start our another hope session, healthy options for prevention excellence. Our focus is on dementia prevention, uh, research update, and some practical tips for all of us to use on our daily lives to reduce our own risk of dementia. But all these discussions are also applicable to people with very early stages of dementia or mild cognitive impairment, where we can slow down the memory decline and improve quality of life. So today we have the honor of having Dr. Kyle Davis uh, as a presenter. The title is Healthy Sleep for a Healthy Brain. Uh, Dr. Davis is a licensed clinical psychologist specializing in clinical health psychology and behavioral sleep medicine. Dr. Davis earned his bachelor's degree in psychology from Oklahoma State University and PhD in clinical psychology from University of Colorado in Boulder, and then completed a specialized training in sleep disorders at the University of California, San Diego. Dr. Davis has worked in a number of clinical settings, including primary care, outpatient, behavioral health, sleep medicine, and lifestyle medicine clinics. And Dr. Davis currently lives in Boise and works full time in his private practice, Confluence Health Psychology, where he focuses on treatment of sleep disorders. So, Dr. Davis, I'll also request you at the end to just tell us how, if people want to reach out to you, what's the best way? Is it your website or
Sure.
something else? So, all right, the mic is yours, Dr. Davis.
All right. Thanks so much. So I already, I just put that in the chat box just so it's there in case I forget. Also, and I wanted to verify, can you all see my slides and see and hear me okay?
Yep.
It's been a while since I've done a Teams presentation, and so they're always like changing the software slightly. And so I wanted to make sure that everything was still working smoothly. Um, yeah. So, anyways, thanks so much for the introduction. I'm really happy to be here. I used to teach healthy sleep classes pretty frequently whenever I was working for the lifestyle medicine clinic at St. Luke's. And so I don't get to teach as much as I used to now that I'm working full time in my private practice. So really enjoy these opportunities. And also, I wanted to let you all know that I was saying this just a second ago, but I'm a pretty casual presenter, and I rely pretty heavily on the chat box too. And so if you all have questions that are coming up during the presentation, feel free to type them into the chat box and I will try to respond. And then I'll respond verbally, you type them in. And then yeah, we'll see how it goes. So I will try to save some time at the end for other questions, but I'll also try to answer things on the fly if that makes sense. So, all right. So, and just a little bit of background about this presentation. There is so much to potentially talk about when it comes to sleep and brain health and how healthy sleep can help prevent cognitive decline. Um, I chose to focus a little bit on some of the potential mechanisms by which healthy sleep could help prevent cognitive decline. But I wanted to focus more of the presentation just on practical strategies people can use to help their sleep be as good as it can be. And so this is going to apply, across the board, whether or not you're focusing on cognitive decline or not. Because really it's the same things that promote healthy sleep for anyone are the same kinds of things that are going to help other people, thinking more specifically about cognitive decline. Okay, so I'm trying to see if I just told you all that I was going to monitor the chat box, and I'm trying to make sure that I can actually keep it pulled up without having two monitors. It may not work as well as I wanted. We'll see. Dr. Desai, maybe you can monitor the chat box, and then I'll try to pull it back up if anything is coming up.
Sounds good.
Okay. Okay, so we're going to talk about healthy sleep across the lifespan. We'll talk more specifically about the glymphatic system and its relationship to slow wave sleep. We'll then talk about some practical strategies to help you improve your sleep, and then wrap up talking about different sleep disorders and how you would know if you should seek help or not. So what is sleep and why do we need it? This is a fun thing to think about, but we don't have time to make you all try to answer it before we move on today. But generally, we can describe sleep as discrete periods of non-wakefulness with distinct patterns of brain activity and physiological functions. Essentially, there are certain things that happen during sleep that aren't going to happen during other times of your waking life. And I think it's really interesting that we know more about the functions of sleep from what ends up happening to people when they're not getting adequate sleep than by truly understanding the mechanisms themselves. So it's kind of this backdoor approach where we can learn more about the mechanisms by the type of problems that people run into when they're not sleeping well. But generally, folks in the sleep world agree that sleep is essential for preserving and restoring energy. It helps our nervous system recuperate from wakeful activity. It also helps promote brain plasticity and learning. It's essential for consolidating memories, once again, learning new information, as well as regulating our emotions. So sleep is involved in so many different facets of our health. That is frankly kind of been overlooked until relatively recently, where it's been getting more attention. So let's talk a little bit about sleep duration across the lifespan. And then we'll talk a little bit more specifically about what average sleep looks like. Okay, so you probably don't need me to tell you this, but newborn babies need the most amount of sleep. So they'll need 14 to 17 hours, and that's going to get spread across a 24-hour period. They're not sleeping all at once. And then by the time babies are about 6 months old, they're starting to develop a circadian rhythm. They're starting to consolidate their sleep more to nighttime, though still napping several times during the day. They're going to need 12 to 15 hours. And then by the time kids are hitting 1 to 2 years old, they'll need 11 to 14 hours of sleep, usually sleeping in one big chunk at night, and then another 1 or 2 naps during the day. And then by the time kids are hitting their preschool years, many children are starting to phase out napping during the day, and they're getting pretty much all their sleep at night. Average range there is 10 to 13 hours. And then for school age kids, 9 to 11 hours. By the time we're hitting our teenage years, we're starting to settle into our average sleep ability throughout the rest of the adult lifespan. That would be 8 to 10 hours for teens. And then for the young adults and adults, it's about 7 to 9 hours. Though that's total sleep time. You definitely do start seeing changes in sleep quality as people age. That becomes a little bit more pronounced in the 65 plus crowd. And that's why we start seeing the average sleep ability start to trail off a little bit in that age group. Our bodies are just not able to produce as much deep sleep as they were before. Okay, so individually, how much sleep do people need? This is one of my favorite slides to present every time I get a chance to talk about sleep, because I see so many people that end up feeling really frustrated about their sleep because they are in a situation where they may be trying to sleep more than their body is able to produce sleep. So in general, or on average, most people are going to need 7 to 9 hours of sleep, or adults, I should say. But there's a lot of individual variability there. There are some folks out there that need more sleep than that, in the 9, 10, 11-hour range. And then there's other folks out there that need less sleep than that. And there's no way that they can make their bodies produce more sleep than it's able to. So definitely a good number of folks out there that are closer to 5, 6, 6.5 hours. And then the group that would need like only 4 hours, those folks are really pretty rare, but they do exist. We call them short sleepers, and they can feel perfectly fine during the day and only need 4 or 5 hours of sleep at night. So one of the things I like to bring up here is I'm sure everybody has heard, general recommendations that they should be sleeping 7, 8, if not 9 hours per night on average. And I think about this similarly to saying something like, the average shoe size of an adult male in the United States is a size 10. Well, that may very well be true, but that doesn't mean that a size 10 shoe is going to fit every man out there. And so we've got to take, some of these recommendations with a grain of salt, because you may be, if you're finding that you're just consistently not able to sleep as much as you would like to, one of the factors may be your body's ability to produce sleep, and you may just not need as much sleep as you may be trying to get. So somebody who focuses on treating insomnia, that's something that comes up a lot in my clinic. Just people trying to sleep more than they're able to. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the processes that regulate our sleep, and then we'll get into sleep architecture. So there's two main processes that regulate our sleep: our circadian rhythm, which we refer to as process C, and then process S, which is our body's physiological drive for sleep. Our circadian rhythm is doing all sorts of things. It's controlling when you feel the most alert, when you feel sleepy, when you feel hungry, when you go to the bathroom. It's regulating your body temperature throughout the course of the day. And all this is going on in the background, with us being like pretty, or oftentimes pretty oblivious to this. So people are probably noticing it more right now with the time change in daylight savings, because you probably feel sleepy at the time that you're used to going to bed, but now it's a different time on the clock. So that's your circadian rhythm telling you to feel sleepy or when to wake up. And then our other main force is process S, or our body's physiological drive for sleep. And you can think about this like you would hunger or thirst, in the sense that the longer you go without eating, the hungrier you would get over time. The longer you go without drinking water, the thirstier you would get over time. And the same thing happens with sleep. In the longer you go without sleep, the stronger your body's physiological drive for sleep will become. So let's look at how these two forces work together. Okay, so I'm going to start with our sleep drive. So in this example, this person wakes up at 7 a.m. in the morning, and then all during this time that they're awake, they're generating more sleepiness. This person falls asleep at 11 p.m., they burn off all this sleepiness, and then the process repeats itself again the next day. The green line here represents your circadian rhythm, or more specifically, how hard your brain is working to keep you awake. So at 7 a.m. in the morning, assuming you just had a good night of sleep, your brain's not working hard at all to keep you awake at that point in time. But as the day progresses, it's going to increase its alerting signal to fight against the accumulating sleepiness. And when somebody gets close to their normal bedtime, there's a big drop off in this alerting signal. And this presents an ideal opportunity for somebody to fall asleep. We call this the sleep gate. So I've got the maximum amount of sleepiness and the least or lower amount of alerting signals. Once again, creates an ideal opportunity for somebody to sleep at this time. So when somebody's sleeping well, these forces are really in sync with each other, and maintaining people's sleep. I will add, these are the forces that regulate our sleep. There's another force that we can think about generally that can certainly interfere with sleep, and we'll call that or different forms of arousal. So this could be like cognitive arousal or physiological arousal. I don't want to go into this too much, but I think it's important to acknowledge, that these other things, can certainly interfere with our sleep. So for cognitive arousal, this just means people are thinking a lot about things. Maybe they're problem solving, they're worrying about things, and then that can certainly interfere with their ability to sleep. And then on the physiological side, this could be coming from pain, caffeine, or other substances, or other sensory information, like you happen to sell smoke or a light turned on. Your body would respond to those physiological stimulus to help essentially keep you safe. The same thing goes with the cognitive arousal too. It's like your brain is erring on the side of keeping you awake to problem solve, keep you safe. But that can certainly end up interfering with people's sleep. And those are some of the things that we target whenever people have insomnia and we're trying to help them improve their sleep.
Hey, Dr. Davis.
Yes.
I have a quick question. Some cultures have like afternoon siesta. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it can work really well. In some cultures, there is a natural dip in people's circadian rhythm in the afternoon. And so that's usually the time when people will feel sleepy and are most likely to take a nap. Um, so I think what you end up seeing, in like different cultures sometimes is that people will, take this longer nap in the afternoon. They probably end up sleeping a little bit less at nighttime. And, they're spreading their sleep out that way. I don't I don't think we have any evidence to say that one way of sleeping is better than others.
Okay.
Like in terms of, is it better for your brain health to, have a shorter period at night with a longer period of sleep in the afternoon? Um, I know oftentimes, like in the sleep world, we end up trying to help people consolidate most of their sleep to the nighttime. And I guess because I'm working in the United States and that's more like what people are used to culturally. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see like if other, I've never like looked at different outcomes related to sleep across cultures and how different sleeping patterns could affect that. Yeah, it's a really interesting question.
Thanks.
Uh-huh. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about sleep architecture, and this starts getting more relevant into some of the factors that can promote brain health. So, broadly speaking, sleep is organized into non rapid eye movement sleep and then rapid eye movement sleep. Non REM sleep contains three stages that get progressively deeper. So, stage one is the lightest stage of sleep, and you can think about stage one sleep like a bridge between being awake and being asleep. You've got to cross the bridge of stage one sleep to get into the deeper stages of sleep. And then an interesting fact about stage one sleep is about 50% of the time that people are in stage one, they don't recognize that they're sleeping during this time. So, this is what's going on if somebody is like watching TV and they start to head nod and you throw something at them and wake them up and they're like, what, why'd you just throw something at me, I wasn't sleeping. And you say, well, what just happened in the football game? And they don't know what happened, the other team has the ball. So that person was starting to fall asleep, but once again, they've got no recollection of it. They didn't feel like they were sleeping during that time, but they were. And then stage two sleep can be thought of as a intermediate stage of sleep. We're going to spend close to 50% of our nights in stage two sleep. And stage two sleep is helps prepare our brains for both deep sleep and then REM sleep in the second half of the night. There's some other neat stuff that happens during stage two sleep, but we'll save that for another day. And then stage three sleep, also called deep sleep or slow wave sleep, is where we think a lot of our physiological restoration takes place. It's also, we're going to talk about in a second, when the glymphatic system is really working to clear waste from our brains. There's some other interesting stuff that happens in terms of memory consolidation, memory formation during slow wave sleep or deep sleep. Other interesting facts about deep sleep. This is when it's the hardest to wake somebody up whenever they're in deep sleep, and then heart rate, breathing rate are going to be at the lowest during this time as well. So we need this like deep physiological like restoration that we get from deep sleep, and it appears that our bodies try to prioritize that in the sense that we we'll get this in the first half of the night, and then we spend more of the not or the second half of the night getting REM sleep. So if you're only going to get 3 or 4 hours of sleep, your body once again appears to be prioritizing deep sleep, because that's what it's going to get that's what it's going to get first before it moves on to REM sleep. And then lastly, we have REM sleep, or rapid eye movement sleep. And as the name implies, REM sleep is characterized by rapid eye movements, your eyes moving back and forth. The reason that's occurring is because your brain is processing visual information during REM sleep. That's when we're doing a lot of our dreaming. Our bodies are also partially paralyzed during REM sleep, so that we do not act out our dreams. And we think REM sleep is really important for our emotional well-beings. This kind of gets into the function of dreaming. But I think it's so interesting. Like so many people have had the experience. If you're going through a difficult time or have a big problem in front of you, many people have had the experience of coming up with a new solution to a problem, during a dream, or they wake up during the night with a new solution, or even in the absence of a new solution, they may wake up in the morning with an increased sense of acceptance over things going on in their lives. And we think that sleep is helping facilitate that acceptance or problem solving. And that's probably happening during REM sleep. It's really interesting stuff going on. Let's talk about how our brains progress through these stages. So starting off here, we have stage W, and that stands for wakefulness. And then we've got stage 1 sleep, stage 2 sleep, and stage 3 sleep. So this person crosses the bridge of stage 1 sleep. They get a little bit of stage 2. They get this first chunk of deep sleep, cycle back up to stage 2, and they get a little bit of REM sleep on the tail end of that. So that first U shape you see is what we call a sleep cycle. And a sleep cycle is going to last approximately 90 minutes to 2 hours. After this person finishes the first sleep cycle, they drop back down into stage 2, get another chunk of stage 3, back up to stage 2, a little bit more REM sleep. This person wakes up for the first time during the night, right around the 3-hour mark. Hopefully, they're able to fall back asleep easily. Looks like they were in this case. Maybe they had to go to the bathroom or something. They get a little bit of stage 1, back to stage 2, a little bit more stage 3. And then you can see they've gotten all the deep sleep that they're going to get here in the first half of the night. And then they start spending their time alternating between stage 2 sleep and REM sleep, stage 2 sleep and REM sleep. We've got another awakening over here. And the last thing I'll say is, as we get closer to the time that we typically wake up, people may feel like their sleep is getting progressively lighter, where they're just kind of in and out of, these lighter stages of sleep. And maybe you're dreaming, you're kind of thinking about something and it evolves to a dream, and then you kind of snap to and you're awake again. That's going to become more common as you get closer to the time that you wake up and you've kind of exhausted most of the sleep drive that you had built up or been burning off through the night. All right. And I really wish I could see my chat box easier. This is
Yeah,
often when people have
there is
questions.
no questions as yet.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. If somebody poses, I'll just unmute and then you'll know that there is a question.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about how sleep architecture changes across the lifespan. And I think this is important for people to understand, especially if they are getting frustrated with their sleep as they get older, and they may be comparing their sleep in its current state to what it's felt like in the past. So we've got a few different terms to define here, and then we'll talk about how it changes. So sleep latency refers to how long it takes people to fall asleep. This WASO refers to wake after sleep onset, or how long people spend awake during the night. We've got REM sleep, slow wave sleep, or stage 3 sleep, stage 2 sleep, and stage 1 sleep. So let's focus in on slow wave sleep. So if we look at the 5 to 25-year-olds, this age group is getting significantly more deep sleep proportionally to other stages of sleep compared to their older counterparts. So why do you all think that is? And I won't make you answer it since I can't see the chat box. But think about it. Why would those 5 to 25-year-olds need so much deep sleep? They need it because it's facilitating brain growth, development during this time. So they need all this deep sleep to facilitate that growth and development. When their brains are fully formed around the age of 25, we really see the slow wave sleep start to flatten out and stay pretty consistent throughout much of the adult lifespan. But it does start to trail off a little bit in the 65 plus crowd. And so as we start getting less slow wave sleep here, we also see an increase in wake after sleep onset, or how long people are spending awake during the night on average. And we also see an increase in stage 1 sleep, or this lightest stage of sleep that people may not even recognize that they're sleeping in. And so this doesn't mean that people can't sleep well as they age, but it does mean that their sleep will likely be qualitatively different from how it was whenever it was younger. And even just knowing that, and maybe changing expectations for sleep can really help some people out. Because I'll sometimes see people that are really stressed out about waking up during the night. And there's nothing inherently wrong with waking up during the night. But if people think that that's a problem and then they start worrying about it more and they start trying harder to sleep, then that's a quick way to start developing more problems with insomnia. So even just being accepting can be helpful there.
Hey, Dr. Davis, I have a quick question. So, how much of this could be influenced by like light, bright light exposure, exercise? As you age, sometimes if that goes down, then that might also sort of accelerate this age-related changes.
Yeah, I definitely don't think it would help. So we're going to talk in just a minute, about some different behaviors that people can engage in, to help make sure their sleep is good as it can be. But to your point, like how much is this like organic in nature, that it's kind of inevitable that you're going to experience significant declines in slow wave sleep versus it being driven more by other factors in somebody's lifestyle. I'm not sure, but I definitely think you would see some pretty significant changes in sleep architecture overall, even despite, somebody living a really healthy lifestyle.
Right, right. Good.
Sometimes I explain it like, it's like you can be strong as you age, but you're probably not going to be as strong as you were when you were 25. And so you can kind of think about some of what's going on in your brain in a similar way.
Right, right, right. There's just so much research and money going into this longevity medicine that I don't I don't think they'll be too thrilled with your answer, but I think yours is
Oh,
more realistic,
they'll be willing to spend a lot of money on that extra like 1%.
Correct,
And
right,
I think
right.
that's kind of what that field is like. But
Correct.
so let's talk a little bit more about the glymphatic system and sleep. So this is super cool. Like when you start looking at the functions of people's brain and like what's actually going on during sleep. And I'm curious, have you all talked about this, like the glymphatic system, like in other presentations before?
Not at all, zero. So please.
Oh, okay. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, this may be something that people want to learn more about in the future.
Correct.
But the lymphatic system is like the lymphatic system for your brain. And once again, I am not a neuroscientist. So I'll explain how I think about it and take it with a grain of salt because once again, I'm no neuroscientist here. This isn't my area of research, but I do find it fascinating and want to help you all explain it as much as I can or understand it as much as I can. So the glymphatic system is pumping waste out of your brain during the night. Specifically, this is cerebrospinal fluid, and it's like a pump. And the glymphatic system will actually sync up with people's brain waves. And your brain waves can be influenced by your heart rate and your breathing rate. So you can think about this as like you're like managing, I'm trying to think of the right word here. It's like you're affecting this pump by your breathing and your heart, but this is going on subconsciously because you're sleeping during this time. So, anyways, lymphatic system is pumping metabolic waste from your brain, which is really essential for maintaining your brain health. So during slow wave sleep, brain cells actually get a little bit smaller, which increases space around the neurons that allows more of this fluid to be pumping in and out to take out the bad stuff and bring in the good stuff. And so effective nightly cleansing, we think may help prevent conditions like Alzheimer's by reducing toxic buildup in the brain. And so what can we do to help your lymphatic system function as well as possible? And so this is something that I've heard in a couple different places recently. I looked up some of the research on this. Like this is one of those things where there's a study on rats, that said rats that slept in this position did a little bit better. but I'll take it. And so anyways, like in this specific study, they found that sleeping on your side versus your back may help improve the efficiency of the glymphatic system. And it's almost more like it's just common sense. Like whenever you have you're basically allowing gravity to play a greater role when you're sleeping on your side versus your back. And so this is something that people may consider doing to potentially help improve their glymphatic system function as well as possible. We also know that people that have other sleep disorders are more likely to be sleeping on their back, and those other sleep disorders are also associated with dementia and Alzheimer's. So it's interesting, but this may be actually something that people have control over that can help improve their brain function as well as possible. So I was kind of getting into like, okay, so if your lymphatic system is doing this, like what can you do to help your lymphatic system as well function as well as possible? I was searching over and over again to try to find this recent reference from this presentation I saw. I haven't been able to find it yet. It may not actually be published yet, but the research was showing that paced breathing, or more specifically, like really focusing on slowing down your breathing, doing diaphragmatic breathing, can help promote the synchrony between like your brain waves and your breathing, basically. Now, Dr. Desai, have you all talked about breathing exercises, paced breathing, and how that can help people with cognitive decline?
Yeah, we've talked about just a little bit also on just the breathing exercises, relaxation, stress management, but not really more than like 1 or 2 minutes, which is, so if you
Okay.
can correct that, that'll be a good thing.
Yeah, no, I think what it speaks to more of is probably a mechanism by which paced breathing like actually ends up helping people improve their cognition or delays, these other like factor or things like dementia. And so the way that I, explain to my patients, because we do this a lot for stress management, anxiety management, and helping people sleep, I want them to be as relaxed as possible going into bedtime. But paced breathing is like what it sounds like. You're basically counting while you're breathing to control your rate of breathing. And what we're looking for are longer exhalations to inhalations. So we think that paced breathing before going to bed can help improve functioning of the glymphatic system, improving brain waste removal and overall neurological health. It's going to increase cerebrospinal fluid movement, aiding in the removal of toxins from the brain. And if you're doing that, then you're helping lower the risk of neurodegenerative diseases. So I know this next slide is actually about paced breathing.
Hey, Dr. Davis, a quick question on sleeping on the side.
Yeah.
So for obstructive sleep apnea, is it better to sleep on the side? Or
Well,
no
yeah,
such
I
reason?
mean, definitely. So like if people, well, I guess it depends like when they're having apneas, but people are definitely more likely to have apneas when they're sleeping on their backs. And so sometimes an effective treatment for sleep apnea can simply be sleeping on your side or your stomach, though easier said than done.
Correct. Okay.
Now, yeah, people already have CPAPs, then that may become more of a challenge because it's interfering with their
Correct.
mask. And
Correct.
okay,
Thanks.
so let's talk a little bit more about paced breathing. So this is another, kind of take home message from this presentation, something really straightforward that you can do to potentially improve your brain health and maybe through the specific mechanism of helping your lymphatic system operate as efficiently as possible. So essentially you're just finding a comfortable position, and then you're going to breathe in through your nose and exhale through your mouth. There's all sorts of variations on this. A popular one, it's called 4-7-8 breathing, where you breathe in through your nose for 4 seconds, you hold it for 7 seconds, you exhale for 8 seconds. box breathing or square breathing would be another form of this, where you're breathing in for 4 seconds, holding for 4 seconds, exhaling for 4 seconds, holding for 4 seconds, inhaling for 4 seconds. But it's all about changing the ratio of your in breaths to your out breaths to slow down your heart rate and activate your parasympathetic nervous system. Um, so if anybody's like, I think like good places to go for these kinds of breathing exercises um, could be like Insight Timer as like thousands of breathing exercises. There's an app I use all the time that has some straightforward stuff. I'll try to remember to type this in the chat box later. But the app is called CBTI Coach and just has some really straightforward relaxation strategies. You don't have to use, something else to guide you through this. It really is simple as, just counting your breaths and your exhalations. But yeah, I would encourage people to do this, like in the evening before they go to bed. Maybe not necessarily like as they're trying to fall asleep, if they have problems with insomnia, but just kind of tying it into their bedtime routine and essentially helping your brain learn how to breathe the way you would want to be breathing during deep sleep. And if you're not ever breathing like that at any other time, it may not do as good of a job as it could if it had that practice from other parts of your life.
Hey, Dr. Davis.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I put that in the chat, CBTI Coach, Cognitive Behavior Therapy for Insomnia. And Rory had a comment, CPAP masks leak more if not supine. So
Yeah. That would be the problem.
Right.
Yeah. And so then you're evaluating like, hey, is it better to have a leaky mask or to have my head or like in a different position to improve drainage in the lymphatic system? I would say 100% use your CPAP as well as possible. Let it work for
Right.
you. If you've got the option, to sleep on your side, then that's kind of maybe the next best thing you could do. But I would definitely take treating sleep apnea over changing your position.
Right.
If you have to choose. Yeah.
Another comment from Honey Goodman. What average should be the non-REM sleep fall in? For instance, if somebody averages 40 to 50% in light sleep,
Oh yeah. Yeah, so probably about like for slow wave sleep, it's going to be about like 10 to 20% of your total sleep time. Same thing for REM sleep. Then you're probably looking at closer to like 50% for stage 2 sleep. Those would be some averages for percentages in those different stages of sleep.
Right, because nowadays you can have gadgets, right? Like Aura Ring or other ways to get, but I'm not sure how reliable they are. Maybe you can comment on it. Maybe they are more than what I suspect.
Yeah, they're pretty good at telling when people are awake or asleep. They're not as great at sleep architecture,
Right.
or telling like what stages of sleep that you're in, because all it's using like wrist-based movement to seeing if you're moving or not and seeing if you're awake. And then it's looking at your heart rate, and sometimes it's looking at oxygen saturation as well. And all these companies have their own algorithms. And part of the problem is nobody knows like what the proprietary algorithms are. So you don't actually know exactly what the data is telling you. It's interesting, but can definitely cause problems for people too if they start like worrying about it too much. There's even a new sleep disorder called orthosomnia that's characterized by obsession with fitness tracker data. So
Wow.
take it with a grain of salt. Yeah, it's
Right.
like it can lead to more problems than it helps sometimes. Yeah,
Right.
and there's rarely ever like any, it's like you'll get a sleep score or something, but it doesn't give you any feedback about like what to do differently to improve your sleep, and so that can lead to a lot of frustration for people.
Right. And then I would also worry that if there is a AI linked to such gadgets, then AI might say things that I don't know whether they would be as accurate, so we need to be careful.
That's probably the future. Yeah, it's like you'll have like AI sleep coaches, and then it's like they're making recommendations based off of data that may not be accurate, and then
Right.
Yeah, that's real fun. Um, who knows, like it'll be guiding people in the right direction or not.
Right.
Okay, so let's talk more about some other like practical things you can do to help me make your sleep as good as it can be. I think that finding the right sleep schedule for yourself is like one of the most important things you can do to help sleep more soundly, sleep better, more consistently. Um, so we want to find a sleep schedule that's a good fit for you. So if people have a good idea of what their average sleep ability is, and like when I'm working with people in CBTI, we have them track their sleep so we can get a better feel for this. But I would recommend starting with a sleep schedule that's approximately 30 minutes to an hour more than what you think your sleep ability is. So if I think, that my average sleep ability is 8 hours, and this is actually something that the fitness trackers could potentially be helpful with, and it's saying I'm sleeping 8 hours per night on average, then I may want to experiment, with setting up a sleep schedule for myself where I'm not allowing myself to sleep any more than 8.5 hours. So I may say, well, I want to get up at 7 a.m. Then I would say, my new bedtime is 10:30 p.m. I've got to stay up until 10:30 and I've got to be up by 7 every day because I want to have no more than an 8.5 hour window to try to sleep in because I want to try to consolidate my sleep during that time. Um, and so that is like one thing that I feel like people you don't hear like in common sleep hygiene recommendations. You'll hear like keep a regular sleep schedule, but that may not be great advice for somebody who's already having significant problems with insomnia. And so you can experiment, with creating a new sleep schedule for yourself. Some important caveats. We try to get up at the same time every day, regardless of how well you slept the night before. We don't want to try to catch up on sleep in the morning. That can help in the short term, but cause more problems in the long term. And we also want to make sure that you feel sleepy before going to bed at night. So like in my case, if I didn't feel sleepy at 10:30 for some reason, I need to stay up later until I do start to feel sleepy before I would make the decision to go to bed. So we kind of err on the side of sleepiness by staying up later. And then that's going to help somebody sleep more soundly once they do get to bed. And oh yeah, go ahead.
No, that was just a sound.
Oh, sorry. Okay. And then we also want to try to avoid napping or dozing during the daytime so that you've got as much sleepiness as possible to use at nighttime. There are some circumstances, where I'll recommend people take a nap during the daytime. But generally, we try to avoid napping and then we'll add naps back into somebody's sleep schedule if we're not able to help them sleep as much as they need to at nighttime. And that becomes more common as people get older. Okay, our next strategy is called stimulus control. And when we're treating insomnia, that's a fancy way of saying do nothing in bed but sleep and sex and sleep nowhere but the bed. With the idea being your brain's constantly forming an association between where you're at and what you're doing. We want your brain to associate being in bed with being asleep. And so the way this works or like when I'm working with individuals is, we'll say, if you wake up and you feel wide awake in bed or you're feeling sleepy, but then you got into bed and you started feeling awake, or you've been there for more than 15, 20, 30 minutes, you start feeling anxious, you start feeling frustrated. And I care more about that emotional component than the time component. But anyways, we'll have people get up, do something else boring or relaxing, wait until they start to feel sleepy, and go back to bed and try again. I don't want people laying in bed, feeling anxious, frustrated, or planning things, problem solving, thinking about things that have happened in the past, scrolling on their phones, reading, watching TV, because I want to help your brain associate bed with sleep. And the only way we can do that is by eliminating those other things from the bed and so that you're spending proportionally the vast majority of your time sleeping whenever you're there. Sometimes I explain it kind of like crate training humans. If you've ever crate trained a dog before, we want you to associate that place with being with sleep and restfulness. Right. And then some sleep hygiene recommendations. Easier said than done, but we try to avoid trying to fall asleep. If you all tried your best to try to fall asleep right now, even if you gave me your best effort, well, if you just listen to me, you may be able to fall asleep while I'm talking. But if you tried to fall asleep, you probably find that wasn't working well for you. You can't will yourself to fall asleep. You can let it happen, but you can't will yourself. And so we try to, make that mindset shift so that people are letting sleep happen to them. We watch out for caffeine. Afternoon is a good general recommendation. For most people, they can consume caffeine within 6 or 7 hours of their bedtime without, too much of an effect. But people really vary in their sensitivity to that. So you've got to know yourself and when you can use caffeine. Hopefully, people are avoiding nicotine or tobacco altogether, but definitely before bedtime. We watch out for alcohol near bedtime. Alcohol can help people fall asleep initially, but will disrupt the quality of your sleep, especially in the second half of the night. We try not to go to bed too hungry or too full. We watch out for too many liquids in the evening. It's actually a great way to cut down on number of times people wake up during the night. It's just by consuming less liquid. And if you cut out one trip to the bathroom, that could have a significant impact on the quality of your sleep. We try to avoid watching a clock because when people are watching the clock, they're usually thinking about how much time they have left before they need to be up the next day, and then they start trying harder. And then actually, I used this slide when I was talking to the BSU athletic department, but, like doing a lot of vigorous exercise, like right before going to bed, can also make it difficult for people to fall asleep. Okay, other things people
Hey,
can do.
Dr. Davis.
Oh, yeah, sure.
There's one question. How long before bedtime should people avoid alcohol?
Oh, yeah, good question. So, it usually takes like about an hour, for your body to process alcohol. But I'd say like on the safe side, like 3 or 4 hours, before you're trying to go to bed. And that's a good rule of thumb for all those different things, like like vigorous physical exercise, eating a large meal, 3 or 4 hours, I think would be pretty safe bet. So if you're having like a glass of wine with dinner, then that's probably not going to impact your sleep that much if it's earlier in the evening. But if it were like a glass of wine at 9 o'clock and you're going to bed at 10, then it probably would end up showing up in your sleep some.
Right. And I have a question about temperature, room temperature. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So that was actually like one of the things on this slide. So we want your like mid 60s is an ideal temperature for most people. So there's going to be individual variability there, but yeah, mid 60s works well for most people. I know in my house, I usually have the thermostat set at 67 in the winter. And then I know my room's a little bit cooler than that. That's like perfect for me. So yeah, not too hard to come by this time of year. Can definitely be a challenge in the summer though, to keep I don't keep my house as cool as I would like to in the winter because I don't want to pay that, or the summer because I don't want to pay that much for it. Then we want people to feel comfortable in their bedrooms. We don't want light or noise to bother them, so using eye masks, sound machines, leaving a fan on, can all be helpful to take the edge off of little noises in your house. And yeah, once again, once people find a sleep schedule that's good, a good fit for them, we would try to keep them on that schedule as much as possible. All right. And then another important note are people's wind down routines. Sometimes people have this expectation that they should be able to do like really interesting, accomplishment oriented stuff, like right up until the time that they're going to bed. And they just want to flip a switch and hop into bed and be able to fall asleep. But your brain probably needs more time to relax and slow down before it's going to be able to make that transition into sleep. And so I encourage people to give themselves at least 30 minutes to an hour, if not more, time to wind down before they're going to bed. And the kinds of things we typically have people doing are like reading something not too interesting, doing some stretching. As you're learning here today, maybe you should do some breathing exercises during that time. Listening to music, doing some stretching, all great stuff for your wind down routine. Sometimes, I even have people watch television as long as it's not too interesting. I think I usually will get questions about blue light, and people are stunned that I'm saying that you can watch TV before bed. I feel like the effect of blue light on people's sleep has really kind of been overstated, and people have overlooked what people are doing on their electronic devices and focusing solely on the light. where I care more about what people are doing on their devices. So if you're like scrolling on YouTube or Instagram or something, you're engaging with interesting material, and that's going to make it hard for your brain to slow down. Now, I would not advocate for being in a really bright room or having a couple computer monitors like right in front of you before you go to bed. But if you've got your brightness turned down on a television or a phone, probably not gonna disrupt your sleep so much that your melatonin secretion that it's gonna impact your ability to fall asleep. But what you're engaging with definitely will.
Hey, Dr. Davis,
Yeah.
any thoughts on bright light therapy and all these light boxes?
Yeah, they can be great for different things. I'm sitting in front of one right now. Make for great backlights on video calls, but they're also, can be helpful if we're trying to keep somebody up later in the evening. Then I'll have people use bright light therapy in the evening, to keep them up later. But probably most commonly, people are going to be using these in the morning. So we can use them to strengthen people's circadian rhythm around the time that they would normally be waking up. We'll also use them as soon as people wake up if we're trying to help them start waking up earlier, or we're trying to shift their circadian rhythm to an earlier time or phase advance their rhythm. We'll also use bright light therapy for seasonal affective disorder. So yeah, they can be super handy. There's also, I'll show you this little gadget. We used to like have to sit in front of these big lights to get the effect of it. But now there are these new LED visors that shoot blue light into your eyes. So this would be like not the thing to do before you're trying to fall asleep. But if you're trying to strengthen your circadian rhythm in the morning, or you need a little energy boost in the afternoon, you're not able to get outside, then using a visor like this can be helpful for getting blue light exposure.
All right, so that's new to me. So visor for getting blue light exposure. So if somebody Googles this, there'll be plenty of way to get the cool glasses that you have.
And the specific brand that I was wearing there is a company called AO or AYO. Once again, it's like you can get the same benefit just from going outside. So
Correct.
like even right now, with as cloudy as it is, you're going to get more, light exposure from being outside on a cloudy day than you're getting from those visors. But for somebody who has to be up in the morning before the sun is up, then that becomes helpful. Or if you're trying to get light exposure, like while you're getting ready for work or, or something, then there's definitely a place for this. But don't overlook the benefit of just going outside, because you don't need to spend $200 on an LED visor for that. You can just step outside.
Well, you're missing the importance of the cool factor, but that's
The
fine.
cool factor. Yeah, that's something I
Dr.
struggle
Davis,
with probably.
I think we have only a few more minutes, so maybe you can talk about your practice and which patient population seeks you out and what do you do to
Sure.
help them. You okay with
Okay.
that?
Yeah. So yeah, I'll finish this last slide here, and then we'll just skip over the sleep disorders part. But the other thing people can do, to help them feel as alert as possible in the morning, we try to avoid snoozing, increasing your activity upon waking, taking a shower, especially cold water will wake you up. Like we're just saying, getting sunlight, light exposure in the morning will help people feel more alert. And then, practical considerations like listening to upbeat music or talking to a friend or a loved one, just social interaction will wake people up as well. So,
Oh, just two more comments that I wanted to share before we go in the chat box. So one is balancing fluid restriction prior to sleep with taking tart cherry juice for melatonin prior to sleep. So tart cherry juice for melatonin prior to sleep.
yeah, I think, I've seen, recommendations about tart cherry juice and or eating kiwis or, and maybe that affects your melatonin somewhat. Um, I'm guessing you're probably not drinking a large quantity of tart cherry juice. But yeah, I mean, I I wouldn't worry about those details too much. I think it's
Right,
like
right.
one of those things like we're thinking about the details and trying to get it right is probably going to
Correct.
cause you more problems
Right.
than just saying like, you know what, I like my tart cherry juice. It's helping with my melatonin. Maybe I have to pee. Who cares?
Go for it. Yeah.
Go for it. Yeah, that's a lot of this stuff. Like trying to get it right starts creating
Right.
more problems
Right.
because you're seeing if it has an effect, and
So just a
that will
couple
keep
of more
people awake.
things, Dr. Davis. So Lori Vernon commented that probably those cool glasses are 22% off on Amazon. So there you have it. And then a couple of people left, but they said great discussion, fascinating information. Dr. Sue Malchiori has also given great emojis to
Oh,
indicate superb talk. So there you have your instant feedback.
oh, great! Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, so if anybody, like wants to learn more about my practice or potentially schedule an appointment with me, I pretty much handle all scheduling through my website. It's just kyledavisphd.com. And so you can learn more about how my practice operates. I do telehealth, so I work from home. And yeah, I love helping people with their sleep. So it's what I spend the vast majority of my time doing. And yeah, it's really rewarding. The treatment itself for insomnia works really well in a relatively short amount of time. Average number of therapy sessions is like 4, 5, 6, 7 therapy sessions before we're able to help somebody get their sleep to where they want it to be. Um, and like CBTI has like an 80% effectiveness rate, so it's really high. Um, so
Are
yeah,
there
if you're
any,
interested, yeah, reach out.
yeah, excellent. Any patterns you see in the patients